All right, so when we are going to go ahead and we're going to talk about it, right? So, like I said, we have to go over and cover the different diseases that we see with our respiratory system. Now, when we are talking about our respiratory system, we are basically going to be talking about diseases that are commonly associated with cigarette smoking. Because, like you know, cigarette smoking is one of the leading causes of any disease that is seen in our respiratory tract, right? Now, when we talk about lung diseases, so what are the lung diseases that are often associated with smoking, and not just with smoking, generally they can happen otherwise as well. So we are going to study the following topics today. We are going to study about chronic bronchitis, right? We're going to study about COPD. COPD is basically we are talking about COPD. All of these diseases that I'm teaching you right now, they can all be classified as COPD. COPD, the full form of COPD is chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases. Okay, so these are chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases. So inside chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, we can have a lot of different this is like a category, and inside this we can have a lot of different diseases. So we can have chronic bronchitis, we can have asthma, which is very common, we can have emphysema. So all of these diseases are diseases that we have to go ahead and we have to take a look at. Now, when we are going to, let's start by talking about them. Let's first start by talking about chronic bronchitis. What is chronic bronchitis? In these diseases, what do you need to know? You basically need to know how the disease is happening. Okay. So chronic means long term. Remember that. So if a patient has anything for a long period of time, we use the term chronic. There's another term that we have that is the opposite of chronic, and that is acute. So acute means that, sudden. This is something that just happened suddenly. Chronic means that this is something that has been happening for a very, very long time. So when we talk about chronic bronchitis is, like I said, it is associated with smoking. In fact, it is known as smoker's cough, right? It is known as smoker's cough because it is often seen in people who smoke cigarettes. Now, what actually happens is that one of the components of cigarette smoking that is particularly harmful is tar. What does tar do? Tar does a lot of things, but in chronic bronchitis, what tar does is that it stimulates the goblet cells and the mucus glands. Why is that bad? Why is it bad for mucus glands to be stimulated and goblet cells to be stimulated? Why is that bad? Isn't it a good thing? Because if we will have more mucus, then is it not going to trap all the harmful pathogens and be good for the respiratory tract? Now, generally, it would be a good thing. But when these goblet cells and cells and mucus glands will get overstimulated, they will start producing excessive mucus. Anything that is excessive is never good, right? So what is going to happen that there's going to be too much mucus being produced. Now, tar, it doesn't just stop over there. Tar also stops the cleaning action of cilia. So not only is it telling the goblet cells, listen, you need to produce like so much mucus. It doesn't tell it, it basically irritates it. It annoys it so much that the annoyance and the irritation is so bad that your body tries to save you from it by producing excessive amount of mucus. But the sticky tar, because it's a very sticky material, it also coats what? The cilia. And it prevents the cilia from moving. So not only is the excessive mucus being produced by your body, but your cilia are not removing it either, right? The cilia are not removing it either. So what is going to happen? Mucus is going to accumulate and collect in the bronchioles. Because to be very honest, in trachea or maybe the bronchus, this won't be that dangerous because trachea and bronchus are a bit bigger in size. But what about your bronchioles? Your bronchioles are so small, right? So imagine if the mucus starts to collect in the bronchioles. What's going to happen? The bronchioles are going to become obstructed. The bronchioles are going to become obstructed, right? They're going to become blocked. So if your bronchioles are going to become obstructed and your bronchioles are going to end up becoming blocked, then what? So when we are going to, obviously, if the bronchioles are going to be blocked, the person is going to start having trouble in breathing in and obviously breathing out, right? Now, what is going to happen? The collection of mucus. The collection of mucus leads to collection of dirt, of bacteria and viruses. How? I mean, that's the entire job of mucus was to prevent us from this. The entire job of the mucus was to protect us from all this. But now the mucus is leading to collection of all these harmful things because the mucus is not being removed, right? So the mucus is going to block the bronchioles, and since it's not being moved, so whatever bacteria, viruses will get trapped by the mucus, those bacteria and viruses will also get trapped. Normally, these bacteria and viruses would be moved away by the cilia. The cilia would move away the mucus, so the bacteria and viruses would be removed as well. But since the cilia are not working, the bacteria and viruses will be trapped in the mucus and they will not go anywhere, which will lead to infections, right? So what happens that the person is going to end up developing a cough. We call it smoker's cough, right? Why is the person going to be coughing? Because the bronchioles are all obstructed. So the body is going to try to get rid of it. They're going to try, like, listen, let's just get this mucus moving. Let's just try to move it somehow or the other, right? We need to get this mucus out of here. So what are they going to do? The body is going to cough because the cilia is not working. So they will try to cough so they can force all of the mucus out of the bronchioles, right? Now, this what happens that this constant coughing, because this is a chronic disease, it's not something that happens for a few days. This is something that the patient will come and will say, we've had this for like 10 years, right? So what's going to happen? The constant coughing, right, is going to lead to damage of the epithelium. Epithelium is the topmost lining or the outermost lining. So the epithelium is going to end up getting damaged. If the epithelium is going to get damaged, what happens that whenever anything in the body gets damaged, what does our body do? It makes a scar. So that epithelium is going to be replaced by scar tissue. The epithelium gets replaced by scar tissue and um, it's going to be replaced by scar tissue. Along with that, right? Along with that, what is going to happen that the smooth muscles around the bronchioles become thicker. Why? Why are the smooth muscles becoming thicker? Because the smooth muscles are constantly contracting and relaxing to stimulate coughing, right? Because the bronchiole, the person is coughing. So the smooth muscles are contracting and expanding in that process. So what is going to happen? That if you exercise any muscle, it gets thicker. So smooth muscles will become thicker and the entire lining of the bronchioles, the epithelium, is going to be ciliated epithelium, by the way, is going to be replaced by scar tissue, right? What is going to happen? This thickening, because the epithelium is also replaced by scar tissue and the smooth muscles are also thickening. This thickening leads to narrowing of the airway, further narrowing. Whatever obstruction was there, that was there. But other than that, the airways are also going to end up becoming narrow. This is going to lead to difficulty breathing. Right? Then, what is happening due to collection of bacteria, viruses, and dirt, right? And no cilia to move them away, what's going to happen? That there's going to be more chances of developing infections. So not only is the person going to end up with scar tissue, difficulty breathing, but they will also have more chances of developing infections, right? Then what is going to happen? If the person gets an infection, what happens? What happens in any infection? Inflammation, right? The tissue becomes inflamed, it becomes swollen, it becomes red, it becomes painful. So inflammation will happen. That inflammation will further narrow the airways, right? Because the inflammation is what? Swelling up of the tissue. So if the tissue is going to swell up, that's going to even further narrow the airway. So what is going to happen? This is like a cycle. It's not something that happens one time. It's a constant cycle. So eventually, due to the infections, due to the inflammation, due to the accumulation of mucus, due to the constant thickening, due to the narrowing of the airway, what is going to happen? That it's going to lead to the formation of chronic bronchitis. All of this altogether will lead to the patient developing chronic bronchitis. In chronic bronchitis, the patients, when they're going to come to you, they're going to complain of they're going to complain of a sputum, right? Or another term for sputum is phlegm. What is phlegm or what is sputum? So the mucus that is produced whenever we cough, right? When you cough, a mucus can come out or phlegm can come out. That is what sputum is, right? So that sputum or phlegm, they will complain that we have that whenever we cough, a lot of sputum comes out with it or a lot of phlegm comes out with it, right? And that's what they're going to complain of. They're going to say we have a lot of difficulty breathing, we cannot breathe, it's really hard for us to breathe. We're constantly developing lung infections. Just like last month I also had a lung infection, and now again I've got a lung infection going on, right? So all of this is going to go ahead and lead to the development of your um going to lead to the development of chronic bronchitis. Right? Is this making sense? Any confusion about what we've discussed? No. Okay. Now, asthma, we don't need to go over asthma in detail because asthma, quite frankly put, is a very extensive topic. Okay. Asthma, generally speaking, asthma is seen. Basically, what happens in asthma is that the airway tends to become narrow, right? Due to some chemical compounds produced by the body. So some chemical compounds that are produced by the body, they tend to make the airway narrow. And that makes it harder for the person to breathe. Asthma is often associated with allergens or triggers. That trigger can be smoking, not cigarette smoking. I mean, obviously cigarette smoking, but also it can be smoke in the air, the exhaust fumes from the car, the pollens that are present all around, right? So these allergens or these triggers, the pollen grains, the dust, even dust, the smoke that is present outside, all of this, it can cause the body to release certain chemicals, and those certain chemicals, so the body releases them more of as a defense factor. The body doesn't release them to harm us, they release it as a defense factor, and those chemicals go to the airway and they cause the airway to become narrow. They cause bronchoconstriction. The narrowing of the airway makes it harder and harder for the person to breathe. Okay. And let me show you, give me a second. Let me actually show you a picture of chronic bronchitis. Okay, take a look at this, right? This is how your bronchus looks like normally. Okay, the airway is open, our mucus glands, our smooth muscles, they are all in normal quantities, normal proportions. In chronic bronchitis, now see, what has happened is that it's a combination. The number of mucus glands and also the size of mucus gland has increased. So now excessive amounts of mucus is being produced. This white layer on the inside, that is excessive mucus, right? So there are going to be increased number of mucus glands. Then the smooth muscles will also thicken. Hypertrophy means thickening. Smooth muscles will also thicken. Why are they going to thicken? Because of the excessive coughing. Then due to the constant irritation as well as infections, there is going to be inflammation, which is going to lead to further swelling of the tissue. This is going to lead to what? This is going to lead to a narrowing of the airway. And you can see in chronic bronchitis, look, compared to the normal bronchus, how narrow the bronchus has become. So how difficult is it going to be for the person to breathe in this particular situation? And look, even if we take a look at the um, what happens at the histo level, right? Histology level. If we take a look at the cells, this is the normal epithelium. Okay, over here, look at this. My cell lining is normal. My mucus glands are normal. Everything is okay. In chronic bronchitis, the mucus glands, look at them. Look at the mucus glands over here and look at the mucus glands over here. The expansion and the spreading and the overgrowth of mucus glands is too much. Then look at the normal lining or the normal epithelium. And now take a look at the epithelium. See how the epithelium is changing, right? The epithelium is changing and eventually this epithelium will turn into a scar tissue. So chronic bronchitis leads to severe narrowing of the airway. Now, so this is bronchitis. Fine. Then what is emphysema? Now, the interesting thing is that both emphysema and bronchitis do involve both bronchitis and emphysema are COPD. Both of them are in the same category, COPD. They're both chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Chronic means long-term, obstructive means that they're blocking something, and pulmonary means related to the lung. So they're both obstructive diseases, so they both involve obstruction in the airway. But they have certain features that make them quite different from each other. And it's really important that you have an idea of the difference between bronchitis and the difference between emphysema. So when we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about it, let's talk about what is emphysema. Okay. So emphysema is related to inflammation. This inflammation can be due to a person that is developing smoking, right? Or it could be related to someone who is or it can be related to someone who has a history of lung disease. So emphysema is commonly seen with smoking, but even if a person is not a smoker, but they have a weak immune system, they have a history of having a lot of lung diseases, lung infections, they can also develop emphysema, but most commonly seen in smokers. Now, so when we talk about inflammation, right? If there's any person who has a history of reoccurring means again and again and again. So if anybody has a history of developing lung infections again and again and again, right? So if any person has a history, whether they're getting lung infections because of smoking or a weak immune system or because of some other reasons, they're getting a lot of lung infections. So a lot of lung infections again and again and again is going to lead to a lot of inflammation. Okay. Now, what happens in inflammation? I told you that it is swelling, redness, pain, all of that, right? Now, along with all of that, what happens that the white blood cells will leave the capillaries, the white blood cells leave the capillaries and enter the airway, because there's a lot of constant lung infection taking place, right? So one of the ways in which our body fights against lung infections is that the white blood cells will leave the capillaries. They will squeeze out of the caps between the wall of the capillaries, and they'll enter the airways, and that's where the pathogens are, that's where the harmful bacteria are, that's where they will fight them. Now, what happens that for the white blood cells to reach the airway, they need to release a enzyme. Okay, that enzyme is known as elastase. Okay, so especially phagocytes from the white blood cells, phagocytes release elastase. Elastase is a protein digesting enzyme. Excuse me. Why do they even need to release this enzyme? The reason they need to release this enzyme is because where is the bacteria located? Inside the alveoli, inside the trachea, inside the bronchiole. If my phagocyte, the white blood cell, has to get inside the alveoli, it has to go through the wall of the alveoli, right? So it will release elastase, which will digest the elastic fibers in the wall of alveoli. So they can make a pathway to enter the airway and fight the infection. Okay. Now, when we are going to go ahead and we're going to talk about it, we had studied that elastic fibers are really important for the alveoli. Why? Elastic fibers provide us with recoil, right? So that means whenever I'm going to breathe in, my alveoli are going to be able to expand. And whenever I'm going to breathe out, the alveoli are going to relax, right? So they are really important for recoil. They're really important for the recoil. They're important for the alveoli to expand and then come back to the original size. Now, what is going to happen due to, now, if let's say a person gets a lung infection once, right? Only once. So the phagocytes will release the elastase. They will break through the elastic fibers. They will go into the alveoli. They'll fight the infection. Eventually, over a period of time, the alveoli will repair themselves and we go back to normal. But what if a person is constantly suffering from lung infections due to smoking, due to any other disease? If a person is constantly suffering from lung infections, what is going to happen that this phagocytes are always going to be producing, or most of the time they will be producing elastase. Most of the time they will be digesting the elastic fiber. If most of the time they are going to be digesting the elastic fibers, so when are they going to get a chance to repair themselves? Never, right? Normally, in a normal person, even if there is a lung infection, the body gets time to repair itself. In a person who's constantly sick, these phagocytes are constantly producing the enzyme, constant digestion of the elastic fibers. Hence, there's going to be constant damage and not enough chance for the alveoli to repair themselves, right? As a result, what is going to happen that alveoli cannot stretch. The alveoli cannot stretch and recoil when breathing in or out. Why is that bad? How is that bad for you and me? The reason it is bad is because it will cause the bronchioles to collapse. Bronchioles will collapse. Why? Why are the bronchioles going to collapse? Because of pressure changes. My alveoli, when I'm going to breathe in, my alveoli cannot stretch. When I'm going to breathe out, my alveoli cannot contract. My alveoli cannot do anything at all. So what's going to happen that whenever I'm going to breathe out, there is going to be a change in pressure, low pressure. And the fact that the alveoli cannot recoil, right? What's going to happen? That the pressure change will cause the bronchiole to collapse on itself, right? It's going to cause it to collapse on itself. And as it is going to collapse on itself, what is going to happen? It's going to trap air in the alveoli. It's going to trap the air inside your alveoli, okay? And the alveoli will burst. That is what happens in emphysema. So for example, if I draw this for you, take a look. This is my alveoli. This is my alveoli with elastic fibers, okay? This is my alveoli. Now, what is going to happen that as my alveoli will expand, and this is my alveoli contracting. This is during inhalation and that is during expiration. Normally, I would have my elastic fibers like this. They would be all present all around the alveoli, surrounding the entire alveoli. Normally, I would have my elastic fibers. These elastic fibers would allow it to expand and then also contract and return back to their original position. In emphysema, what happens? That in emphysema, these in emphysema, these elastic fibers are damaged. So what is going to happen due to the elastic fibers being damaged, right? These are the damaged elastic fibers. Due to the damaged elastic fibers, what is going to happen? That your alveoli is not going to have any elastic recoil, meaning that it's going to expand when the air is going to come in, but it's not going to be able to return back to its own shape after the air has moved up. So what is going to happen? What's going to happen is this, that the pressure changes will lead to this bronchiole collapsing. As the bronchiole is going to collapse, what is going to happen? The pathway for the air to move out is now blocked. So because the thing what is happening is that I am breathing out, but my alveoli is not recoiling. So that creates low pressure in the bronchiole and the bronchiole collapses. So as a result, the air will get trapped in the alveoli. And as a result, because the air is now trapped in the alveoli will burst. The bursting of alveoli. So what's going to happen that the alveoli will continue bursting. Many alveoli will continue to burst until you will end up getting these large spaces, right? Large spaces will appear due to bursting of the alveoli, because it's not like one alveoli will burst, multiple alveoli will burst. As a result, what's going to happen? Large spaces are going to start to appear wherever the alveoli have burst. In all those areas, large spaces are going to start to appear. Why is this bad? Because what was the function of the alveoli? To increase the surface area for gaseous exchange. If the alveoli has burst, what's going to happen? This will reduce the surface area. This will reduce the surface area for gaseous exchange. When it's going to reduce the surface for gaseous exchange, what is going to happen? Less oxygen is absorbed into the blood, leading to emphysema. This is what emphysema actually is. And when we are going to talk about it, right? So when we're going to talk about it, right? So, um, so So as the disease is going to progress, right? As the disease progresses, so a person has developed emphysema. Your patient has right now developed emphysema. As the disease, if it's not treated right there and then, let's say the person is smoking, they do not give up smoking right there and then, right? As the disease is going to progress, what's going to happen? The blood vessels in the lungs become more resistant to the flow of blood, right? The blood vessels, the capillaries, they start to develop resistance to the flow of blood. Now, what's going to happen that there is going to be more resistance, so it's not going to be easy for the blood to flow. So the body is going to say, what can we do? We need to supply blood to the lungs, and we also need to send blood to the lungs for oxygenation. But due to the action of phagocytes, because the phagocytes are constantly leaving the capillaries and they're producing all these enzymes, due to the function of the phagocytes, the resistance of blood flow has increased. The blood flow is slowing down. But we need there to be good blood flow for the body to function properly. How can we increase the blood flow? The body will say, why don't we increase the blood pressure? We put more force, increase the blood pressure, send the blood with more pressure to compensate for the resistance. That's what they'll say. Let's compensate for the resistance by increasing blood pressure, right? Now, who sends blood to the heart? Sorry, to the lungs, the right side of the heart. The right side of the heart is related to pulmonary circulation. So, the right side of the heart has to work harder because it has to pump the blood with more pressure. And as a result, the right side of the heart will become enlarged. The right side of the heart is going to become bigger because the muscles now have to work harder to give excess pressure to the blood to compensate for the high resistance to blood flow. Now, it emphysema doesn't just affect the lungs. Emphysema affects the heart as well. Even the heart is going to start to suffer. And as the disease will continue, the patient will develop breathing, right? So every time they're going to breathe in, you will hear this whistling sound, right? They'll be gasping, right? Every time they're going to breathe in and breathe out, you'll be able to hear whistling sound. They will be wheezing, right? They're going to be breathless. And why are they breathless? They're not breathless because there has been any blockage of the bronchioles. That was in chronic bronchitis. These people will be breathless because there's not enough oxygen getting to their blood because the alveoli are also all being destroyed, right? So, what is going to happen? That the patient is going to end up developing wheezing, breathlessness, and if this is not treated as soon as possible, so people who develop severe emphysema actually require constant oxygen supply. So they need constant supply of oxygen in a cylinder with a gas mask for them to even stay alive, right? And let me show you what emphysema actually looks like. Hold on, let me show you that. All right. This picture you see over here, this is what a normal lung looks like. Okay. This is what a normal lung looks like. So this over here is the bronchiole, and all of these small, small areas that you can see, these are all alveoli. Take a look at the number of alveoli that we have. Hmm? Now, this is a patient with emphysema. See these large spaces? This is all due to bursting of these alveoli. So what's going to happen that these alveoli, they're all going to burst. So this is going to burst, it's going to burst, all of this is going to burst. When all of this is going to burst, you'll be left with huge, large spaces. This is how emphysema looks like, right? So over here, the patient is going to have, what are they going to have? They're going to have small alveoli. This is normal. In emphysema, the bursting of alveoli is going to lead to large air spaces that will reduce the site of gaseous exchange, leading to difficulty breathing. Not because there's anything preventing them from breathing, but because of the fact that there is less surface area, so less exchange and diffusion of oxygen, leading to low oxygen in the blood. So the person ends up feeling breathless, right? Now, so this is what emphysema is. Is this making sense? Any confusion regarding any of this?
No.
Okay. So, all right. Now, the third disease that you and I need to talk about is lung cancer. Okay. Now, over here, when we talk about lung cancer, so our cigarette smoke, let's talk about what are the different things that are found in the cigarette smoke, right? Why is cigarette smoke so bad? The reason cigarette smoke is so bad is because of the following reasons. A cigarette smoking, specifically tobacco smoking, whether that tobacco is from cigarette smoking or any other kind of method that we are using, tobacco smoking contains tar, right? We have already talked about why tar is bad. It also contains carbon monoxide. We will talk about why carbon monoxide is bad, but we should already have an idea because we've studied transport and habits. It also contains nicotine, which is, as you and I know, it's an addictive substance. And not only is it addictive substance, nicotine is very harmful because it damages, it leads to problems like high blood pressure, low blood pressure, and all of that. And along with all of that, it has something known as carcinogens. What are carcinogens? Carcinogens are cancer causing compounds. So, those compounds that lead to cancer, those compounds are basically known as your carcinogens. Okay. Now, when we talk about carcinogens, carcinogens can lead to cancer development in wide variety of different ways, right? They can either lead to development of cancer by directly reacting with the DNA, or maybe the carcinogen itself will not react with the DNA, but when the body will break down the carcinogen, one of the products will be harmful, right? We don't know if the carcinogen itself is bad, or maybe the carcinogen is okay, but when the body breaks it down, it becomes harmful, right? Regardless, what is it going to do? The carcinogen is going to react with our DNA, causing mutations, right? It's going to react with your DNA, causing mutations, right? Now, when we're going to talk about it, so those genes, cancer causing genes, right? We call them oncogenes. Those cancer causing genes are known as oncogenes. Okay. So when these carcinogens are basically going to lead to DNA mutations and lead to the activation of your oncogenes, lead to the activation of your cancer causing genes. Now, what happens that since there's a mutation in the DNA and the DNA is not functioning properly anymore, specifically remember when we studied the topic of cell cycle. right? And in cell cycle, I told you there are checkpoints at every single stage of the cell cycle. So after the G phase, you will have a checkpoint. After the S phase, you will have a checkpoint. So what happens that there is mutation in the proteins at these checkpoints. So these checkpoints, the proteins that manage these checkpoints, there will be a mutation over there. So what's going to happen that this mutation leads to the checkpoints not working properly anymore. This leads to that damaged, mutated DNA passing through unchecked. And since that mutated DNA is not going to be caught, the cells are not going to realize that it's damaged, the cell will go towards cell division. An easy way to understand this is imagine that there is some kind of you have a secure area. Okay, that secure area works like this, that if there is any uh, it's a secure area surrounded by guards. Okay, or we have a secure area guarded by surrounded by guards. The function of the guards is to check that everything inside is normal. If everything inside is normal, they will they won't interfere in the building, whatever is happening in the building. But if anything bad happens in the building, those guards have the order to destroy the building. Okay, so this is the how the cell actually works. So the cell is the building, and inside it we have a very precious thing, that's the DNA. So think of it this way, that they have like a they have like maybe some kind of gas inside, poisonous gas, whatever. Every day they make sure that the system is working properly, the guards, and the gas is not allowed to escape. If the gas ever escapes or if anything goes wrong, then they have orders to instantly destroy the building so that no harm comes to anyone else. That poisonous gas doesn't not spread anywhere else, or the poisonous liquid doesn't go anywhere else, right? Now, let's say that one of the guards or all of the guards or one of the guards was bribed. Somebody came and bribed them and they said, listen, we will pay you this much money, right? If you uh, just just let it go. If anything goes wrong, just let it go, right? Don't destroy the building. So what's going to happen that if something does go wrong inside the building, if the poisonous liquid escapes, for example, what is going to happen that since the guard is now not working properly, the guard is corrupted, the liquid will start to escape and it will start to damage everything around it. The cell works in a similar way. DNA is like that really important substance that they keep a check on, right? If there is a mutation in the checkpoint, that is one thing. So if there is a mutation in the checkpoint is not working properly. So that mutated DNA, that DNA that is no longer working properly, will be allowed to continue living. And that DNA is going to end up making copies of itself and it's going to start dividing. And as it's going to start dividing, the thing is, it's going to start dividing uncontrollably, right? So in our body, what happens that cell division happens to a certain extent, right? The body, the cells divide up to a certain extent and then they stop dividing. There are multiple ways by which the body prevents overgrowth of cells. One of them is contact inhibition. What is contact inhibition? When the cells come in contact with each other, they stop growing because they realize that, okay, we're running out of space. So yeah, we need to stop growing. There are certain signals and hormones produced by the body that tells the cells, okay, we have enough, you need to stop growing, right? When the cell is going to become cancerous, it's going to start dividing uncontrollably. Even if they come in contact with each other, they're going to continue to grow. Even if they are, even if the body sends them all kinds of messages and signals to stop growing, they will not respond to it, right? So they will simply start to grow uncontrollably, which is going to lead to the formation of a large mass of cells that we call tumor. Now, a tumor can be benign or a tumor can be cancerous, right? Malignant. Use the term malignant. Benign tumor is the kind of tumor that will only spread in that one area. It won't travel to other areas of the body. Malignant tumor or cancerous tumor is the kind of tumor that can actually spread to other areas of the body. It can spread to other area of the body either by, traveling through the blood. So the cells can travel through the blood and go from one area of the body to another, or they can enter the lymphatic system, right? So, so they can enter the lymphatic system. Both ways they can travel and go to other areas of the body where they can spread throughout the entire body, right? So this kind of a tumor is known as malignant tumor. So lung cancer can be of variety of different types, right? Lung cancer can be of variety of different types. The problem with lung cancer is that lung cancer tends to grow for quite a few years. When I say few years, I mean 10 years, 20 years. It grows for a very long time before it actually starts to show any symptoms. So by the time the patient comes to us, normally the cancer is in the advanced stage because the patient does not have any symptoms, they don't show up. By the time they have symptoms, they've had it so long that it's harder for us to treat, right? Patients generally complain that they are coughing up blood. Why are they coughing up blood? Because the lung tissue is getting damaged, so of course they're bleeding, so they're coughing up blood. They complain that they have chest pain, they complain that they have difficulty breathing, right? So we can diagnose it by using an X-ray. We can diagnose it by using a CT scan. We can diagnose it by using bronchoscopy. What is bronchoscopy? So it's like this tube, okay, with a lens on it. We put it down the respiratory tract to see what is happening. A camera, basically, we put inside the respiratory tract to see what's happening. For treatment, we can either go for surgery where we can remove and cut out the mass, or we can go for radiotherapy, or we can go for chemotherapy. The type of treatment you choose is going to depend upon the type of lung cancer the patient has, because we can have different type of lung cancers as well. So that is basically what you have to know related to the topic of lung cancer. Is everything clear? Any confusion? Anything that you would like to ask?
No.
Okay, great. All right. So now we're done with our topic of respiratory system. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to stop it over here for today. I want you to do one thing at homework. As a homework, take this something to do at home. I want you to, before the next class, I want you to make a list with differences between emphysema and chronic bronchitis. Okay?
Okay.